Boo. Way back in my day of 2014, there was a little video game called Five Nights at Fredo's. It was a cheap-ass indie horror game that cost about as much as a Big Mac meal from Mickey Mackey D's, and it took the internet by storm, thanks in no small part to big YouTubers like Jacksepticeye and Markiplier spreading it to the masses via their massive following. I mean, come on now, it's FNAF. Does it really need an introduction?
No! I didn't do anything! Oh!
When this game first came out, I was totally into it. It had lore and backstories, conspiracies. There was a lot going on under the hood beyond the initial promise of spooky Chuck E. Cheesy boys. I lost touch with it around 2016 as I moved on to other things like depression and first-person shooters. A little redundant, maybe. Five Guys Burgers and Freddy's would become so successful that I got a sequel a couple of months later, and then there was another one. And another one, 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 and another one. That's a different one. What is this? What is that? That's not it. That's wrong. What the fuck? Eventually, it became so damn popular that they announced a movie was in development. 6 fucking years ago. Just recently, the movie's existence was reconfirmed, but I imagine it won't be long until it sinks back into development hell when the director starts getting harassed by the fanbase because William Afton's fingernails are the wrong color. Before this movie got a chance to even start getting off the ground, a bunch of people, including none other than Nicolas actual Cage, started making a movie called Willy's Wonderland, first announced in 2019 and released just last year. Nicky acts both as a producer and the lead actor, so he's all over this movie. If it wasn't enough that it was an obvious Five Nights at Fettuccine inspired thing, Cage Nickman is probably the biggest draw for this movie. Despite that, it didn't do a good job at the box office, not even making back 10% of its already modest budget. Although some of this could probably be attributed to Corona beer, the pessimist in me says it's more likely that most people just didn't give enough of a shit. Metacritic indicates mixed or average reception, but for a slasher horror movie thing, that's basically an Oscar. It tells the story of an abandoned children's birthday party themed restaurant in a ghost town haunted by these possessed animatronic characters that attack and eat anyone who comes near, and was previously run by demented murderous cultists. Judging from the timing and the premise, this is almost definitely not a coincidence. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Some of the most iconic horror movies and premises are based on pre-existing concepts, you know, killers wearing masks and walking around with a sharp or a blunt instrument that is very good at killing hormonally stressed out teenagers. Very few things are entirely original when you get down to it, and that's not a horrible thing as long as they're good on their own terms. But is Willy Wonka's Wonderful Waffle House good? Well, it's not exactly bad. The premise is that Nicolas Cage is driving on the open road, presumably in search of his name because he doesn't seem to have one. He pops his tires after driving over a spike trap, so he calls a mechanic who tows him into town, but he only accepts cash and Nick doesn't have enough. And by an awfully inconvenient coincidence, this town happens to be the one place in the United States that doesn't have internet, which means he can't even use an ATM. So he agrees to work off the repair by cleaning the Willy's Wonderland restaurant for the grand reopening, and from here on in, he is known only as the janitor. But it turns out that the entire plot was an elaborate ruse. The real goal was to lure him into being one of many in a constant stream of human sacrifices to appease the possessed animatronics who inhabit the restaurant so they don't run wild and kill the citizens of the town instead. Of course, what they didn't count on is that old Nicky C here is actually very good at fucking up animatronic mascots. He doesn't even need weapons half the time, he just throws hands and wins every time. He can even kill them literally with his hands tied behind his back. One by one, the animatronics attempt to kill him and eat him, and one by one, he outmaneuvers them and brutally destroys all of them in the most ridiculous over-the-top fashions possible. It's like Predator, except with goofy robots instead of this thing, and Nick Cage instead of Arnold. Actually, scratch that. It's more like what the Doom movie should have been. Just one man with the odds seemingly stacked entirely against him, except he turns out to be so powerful that nothing can stand in his way. I love how the opening credits use the same generic pixelated VHS tape fonts that the actual Five Nights games have to bring to mind the security tapes. Certain plot points, like specifying the mysterious odors and substances, are very similar to the games, and I can't help but feel like the concept of burning the restaurant down is a reference to the ending of Five Nights 3, but I might be giving the movie too much credit there. It does feel self-aware, with the animatronics all having these weird, goofy personalities of their own, which almost reminds me of those fan games where Freddy talks about smoking crack and inhaling dongs.
Inhale my dong and rage my child.
I think for me though, my favorite animatronic is this big gnome guy with the big ass sword. He's so funny, just look at him. Even though the premise is very clearly inspired by Five Nights at Funko Pops, the attitude and the atmosphere is not at all the same. In terms of actual horror and scariness, there are things that are way scarier, like a low-quality MP4 of William Afton burning in hell. There isn't really a lot of mystery or room for interpretation concerning its backstory. The movie pretty much shows its full hand, with not a ton of room for theories. Really, I don't think this movie is even supposed to be very frightening at all. It's a horror movie in the same way that all the Friday the 13th movies are horror movies, in that they might be horrifying if you're afraid of fake blood, but if you're an adult, it's honestly just funny. There is a very heavy undercurrent of humor and comic relief that makes it feel different and not as predictable as you might expect. I mean, it's not some masterpiece, but you can tell that they had fun making it. I mean, really, come on, how could you not? Nikki C is famous for playing bizarre, quirky, lunatic characters and bringing them to life with maniacal, expressive performances and off-the-wall, schizophrenic dialogue. But what's funny about that is that he doesn't have a single line of dialogue for this entire movie. The only noises that come out of his mouth are purely guttural, like Doomslayer or Blink from Ocarina of Time. This weird contradiction is one of the funniest parts of the movie, and I don't know if it's intentional. His character is so diametrically opposite to what you imagine to be his strengths as an actor. The most cagey moments are when he's just wailing on these bastards while screaming like a crazy person, and also when he plays pinball. All he does is clean tables, kill Chuck E. Cheese, slam beers, and play pinball. Like, literally, in between every animatronic, he just starts playing pinball, and you can tell just by looking at his face that he's just so into it that you have to start laughing. I actually believe that at least 6% of this movie is just pinball. That's the most hilarious thing about this movie. It is abundantly clear that he was deceived and that he's not really there to clean a restaurant. But even after the animatronics start trying to eat him, he just keeps right on cleaning like that's the main priority. He's kind of like Mike from Better Call Breaking Bad. Whether he's hired to kill somebody or to make sure you have enough stickers on your parking pass, you best believe that job's gonna get done.
Enough stickers? More stickers?
But he's also sure to pace himself and take breaks. Sometimes I kinda wish he was developed a little more, but at the same time, a guy who only knows how to clean tables, drive, fight animatronics, and play pinball is goofy enough just to be funny at a fundamental level. To be honest, I almost felt like he decided to be in this movie just to see if he could do it. It's not exactly playing to his strengths, but he's still kinda funny anyway. Now, no matter what they did with this movie, it would be far from a masterpiece, but the true weakness here is the other non-Nicolas Cage characters. There's this entire side story with these Scooby-Doo-ass teenagers trying to burn down the restaurant after being traumatized as children. The main teenager, Liv, is being held captive by her crazy surrogate mother who's on the police force and part of the conspiracy. She's basically the leader and is the only one that survives the movie. The rest of them are so shallow and unimportant because their only purpose in life is to be killed by the robo-fucks. Confirmed. It's a horror movie. There's even the classic horror movie dumbass scene where two characters start having sex even though they know full well how in danger they are. And then they act all surprised when they get killed. The moral of the story is never have sex. Scott the Woz taught me that. So should you watch Willy's Wonderland? Well, you shouldn't not watch it. It's on Netflix, at least in Canadino, so if you still have a Netflix subscription and haven't swapped it out with a streaming service that still has FMA Brotherhood on it, this is the time to watch it. Spook-ass month is still in full swing, so if you're looking for some goofy, trashy horror junk food with half a teaspoon of old Nicky C, this will be your favorite movie for like a day. The reason nobody talks about it is probably because it's not some masterpiece, and it might not even be good per se. But I mean, come on. He's playing pinball.